Okay, this is the continuation of Chapter 7 and Crossing the Chasm. Essentially, there are two key ingredients in Geoffrey Moore's book to cross the chasm. The first one is what he calls identify a beachhead, and the second one is develop a whole product solution. Let's look at what these mean. The definition of a beachhead is a single target market from which to pursue the mainstream market. As you can see here, there are two criteria for a good beachhead. First of all, a good beachhead is selected because customers in that target market have a compelling reason to buy the technology, and that compelling reason to buy matches the technology firm's capabilities. And I'll explain what this means in a minute. The second criteria for a good beachhead is that it gives adjacencies to interrelated segments, where the definition of an adjacency is that the people in the beachhead have logical word-of-mouth relationships to the other segments behind it. So let's go ahead and look at some pictures here. First of all, the beachhead is, the metaphor would be, well, it's a metaphor on a metaphor. The beachhead is the lead pin in the bowling alley that is selected strategically. So when that lead pin is successfully dominated, it logically provides access to the pins immediately behind it. And what you see here on the left-hand side of the diagram is this word customer references. This word captures the idea of the word-of-mouth relationship among pragmatists. Remember, crossing the chasm means we're dealing with pragmatist customers who need a customer reference or a word of mouth from somebody either within the same industry or in a closely related industry. The second dimension on our bowling alley says whole product, and I'm going to defer discussion of that for a moment. There's really not a left-hand path and a right-hand path as this bowling alley makes it seem. It's just that to have a well-thought-out bowling alley strategy, we have to consider both customer references and whole product similarities across the segments that we're talking to in our beachhead strategy. So how do we pick this lead beachhead? Sorry about that. The compelling reason to buy for a pragmatist customer is that when they purchase the new technology, it must radically improve their business's productivity on a critical success factor. And you can read more about this in Chapter 7 on page 244, where this compelling reason to buy for a pragmatist customer is contrasted to what would motivate a visionary. Their compelling reason to buy would be very different than the pragmatist customer. And similarly, what would motivate a more conservative customer, their compelling reason to buy would also be different. So let's think of this compelling reason to buy for a pragmatist. It has to radically improve productivity on a critical success factor. Now think back to our discussion of value propositions from Chapter 2. What we learned in that chapter is the best value proposition to market technology is a value proposition that explicitly states what the return on investment will be for the customer's purchase of that technology. So essentially what we see is that Geoffrey Moore is independently coming up with the same value proposition as we discussed in Chapter 2, the resonating focus. So to radically improve productivity, what that means is when I buy your technology, how is my investment in your technology either going to make me money or save me money? So if you think about the pragmatic customer saying, okay, my profit is a function of total revenue minus total cost, and now you're asking me to spend money, so I'm going to increase my total cost. So how am I either going to increase my revenues because I bought your technology, or how am I going to get payback or a return on investment by lowering my costs? So that's the compelling reason to buy. And I'm going to give some examples here in a minute. But before I do that, I'd like to explain just a little bit more about what it means to have apps and segs. And I'm going to go ahead and give an example here. One of the most famous high-tech startups in Montana is the startup by Greg Gianforte, Right Now Technologies. Right Now Technologies essentially delivers a software as a service to manage customer service inquiries. And the way that their algorithm works is that the more customer service inquiries that come into their automated platform, the more refined the algorithm becomes in order to deliver better solutions. So this is an example of a network effect, as we've talked about previously, that the greater number of inquiries, the more precise the algorithm is to give a more correct answer to the customers who are making the customer service inquiry. Essentially, Right Now Technologies' initial segment was based on the 80-20 rule. We know that 20% of businesses account for 80% of the volume of business, generally. And Right Now's logic was, why don't we identify the largest companies in the United States, because by extension they're going to have the largest volume of customer service inquiries. So essentially their beachhead was based on this heavy user phenomenon, the well-known 80-20 rule. And so their application was a customer service program. And when we think about how companies grow revenue over time, they can either create new products or new versions of their products, which in the language of this beachhead or in the software industry would be another app. So application number 2. And that app could be targeted to exactly the same segment as we sold our first app to. Or we could use the same app that we already created, the customer service app, and sell it to a totally different segment. Maybe we're ready to go after a European market. So in terms of this beachhead, what Greg Gianforte found early in Right Now's trajectory of success was that they had very uneven renewal rates in their book of business. And what they discovered is that the renewal rates were highest among these large companies that had the highest number of customer service inquiries. And so rather than saying all large companies have a lot of customer inquiries, what they found was that some large companies had greater customer service inquiries than others. So in this particular case, following a beachhead model, rather than just using an 80-20 rule and saying all big companies can save money on customer service with our product, what they should have said was, what types of companies is customer service centrally related to their productivity? Meaning that they incur a huge percentage of their cost is tied up in customer service, or conversely, customer service is actually part and parcel of growing their revenue. So you can see by using the language of the compelling customer reason to buy, typically this general 80-20 rule wouldn't suffice. And what we see is that a real beachhead is very specific typically in terms of a vertical market application, where the word vertical means industry specific. So if we said what types of industries have a large percent of their costs tied up in customer service, logically one of them would actually be companies that sell technology products. They all have to have a technical service support hotline. Another vertical market that incurs a huge, they have call centers, and call centers are critically important, is any type of company that engages in direct marketing where customers call a call center to place an order. This could be, a version of catalog sales, for example. So what Greg Gianforte found was that by redefining this initial choice of market segment in the language of the beachhead specifically, he had a much higher renewal rate among his customers because their value proposition was centrally related to the quality of customer service that they provided. And so he selected these two segments, which were, actually initially it was the direct marketing industry. And so after he dominated that direct marketing industry with the Right Now technology software, the growth path essentially was, do we create a new app based on our algorithm, another application, or do we go after another market segment? So the way that this would work is, what other types of departments in these catalog companies have a large number of inquiries coming in? And what Right Now quickly realized is that many of these companies that are providing customer service were outsourcing a lot of the service to the BRIC countries such as India, native English speakers, and in their process of trying to onboard a large number of employees, they were getting a large number of inquiries to the human resource department. So one possibility for them was to actually use their algorithm to handle human resource inquiries about benefits, insurance, recruiting policies, all the things that new employees need to know about when they come online with a new company. Conversely, if Greg Gianforte was going to follow the left-hand side of this path, he would say, okay, I've capitalized on the catalog industry and the direct marketing industry. In the direct marketing industry, who do those people logically talk to in the course of doing their business? So if he was going to continue with customer service inquiry, he wouldn't pick, for example, banks, because banks are in a totally different business than catalog companies. Catalog companies deal intimately with their vendors. They deal intimately with their shippers, the people who handle the logistics. And so the question is, do logistics providers also get a large number of customer service inquiries? And the answer is yes, people want to track their packages, right? Or do vendors get a large number of customer service inquiries? Well, they could if they also offer some sort of a .com ordering system. So by following logical word-of-mouth relationships, what a company does is they build a strategy ahead of time for what should be their beachhead. And once they're successful in that beachhead, how do they continue to grow over time? We give another example in the book on page 245 of another Montana company called Goomsy Mobile Marketing that engages in mobile marketing solutions. We'll do many beachhead examples in class. Again, I refer you to the blog wisepreneur.com, where I actually discuss a beachhead strategy for the use of QR codes. The second ingredient, according to Jeffrey Moore, to cross the chasm is to develop the whole product, where the whole product essentially is defined from the customer's perspective. And it includes all the things that customer needs in order to complete their solution. Let me give a quick example. Let's say that you're in the business of developing websites for a company. When I come to you as a customer and I say, hey, could you build me a website for my new business? I'm going to be selling, some sort of gadget. And so we get a website developer to build a website. And the question is, okay, let's say I paid $5,000 for that website. What else do I as a customer need in order to really capture all the value of that website? Well, obviously I need a domain name, and that might be obvious, but how to do it and who does it maybe needs to be discussed. I need to make sure that I have some sort of software to keep my website up to date. Is my vendor going to do that, or am I going to take that on myself? We know with websites that we have to have some sort of a strategy for marketing, so who's going to engage in either search engine marketing or search engine optimization? That's another thing I need to consider. My website needs to be hosted. Who's going to be my server? Is it going to be GoDaddy, or is it going to be the person who built my website? So you can see from a pragmatic customer perspective, they oftentimes don't even know what are the other elements of the end-to-end solution that they need, because technology is new for them. And the vendor sometimes knows that he or she is providing only a piece of that solution, but unless they think like a customer, the customer is going to be very dissatisfied because they still have to consider all these additional issues before the value of what they paid for you is actually delivered in this total product solution perspective. And the implications of this are twofold. First of all, each target market has fairly unique needs for the whole product. So once a company thinks about its beachhead, it needs to think about what other target markets are going to have similar elements to the whole product solution. Because a company doesn't want to have to rebuild the total solution or find partners to help in the total solution for every market that they go after. And then the other implication is that the vendor really needs to have partners in place so that unless they're providing all aspects of the whole product solution, which most of them don't, they have referrals in place that they work with on a regular basis, so these pragmatic customers are not overly burdened with trying to cobble together the whole solution. Okay, in addition to crossing the chasm, there are other considerations that are listed here, and I would like you to go ahead and do these on your own. And Geoffrey Moore has a series of books that have followed on from his first book, Crossing the Chasm. His second book is called Inside the Tornado, because the fact is, once a company successfully crosses the chasm and their bowling alley strategy has been successfully deployed, the ramp up in their sales happens incredibly quickly, and it is like a tornado. And in order to be successful when this quick ramp up of sales is taking course, the company all of a sudden needs to have operational excellence, and they need to have partners in place. And so his second book, Inside the Tornado, is quite good. His third book deals with something called Dancing with the Gorilla, if I've got the name correctly, which essentially means many of these high-tech industries end up with one or two dominant players, and the fact is other companies can still find success in those industries even if they're not dominant. And the only caveat I want to put on that is his third book was written before this issue of ecosystem competition came to be the normal lay of the land in technology industries. So it could be that that third book maybe needs to be adapted for today's ecosystem paradigm. Okay, and then finally, Geoffrey Moore's initial book, Crossing the Chasm. Once we're successful with pragmatists, how do we market to conservatives? The fact is, a lot of technology companies leave the conservatives' money on the table. And the fact is, they are another full 34% of the market. And so while the high-tech company is actively trying to add new features and continue to innovate new technologies to continue to be leading edge, they should have a second department whose job it is to make the existing technology simpler, cheaper, easier, because conservatives want to buy, but they need their own specific functionality so they're not overwhelmed by too many bells and whistles. And in fact, this marketing to conservatives is a point at which many disruptive innovations that are very simple come into the market and essentially steal these people's money from the established players because they don't want to pay for functions they don't need and don't know how to use. I mean, the fact is Microsoft has added so many features to its software that some people call it bloatware, because most of us don't even know what features are there, but the fact is we're paying for all of them. So if they could have a simpler version, it would make a lot of sense. All right, so then a summary on crossing the chasm that you see here. And this ends the second podcast for Chapter 7.